Hello, everyone, and happy 2023. Happy New Year. Thanks so much for listening in for a whole new episode today. We are so excited to kick off the new year with a little bit of a 2022 reflection and then sharing what's on our mind for our 2023 intentions, not super like goal setting oriented, but just, a good little reflective episode to get us in a good headspace for the new year.
Yeah, well, and if you listened to last week's episode, which was a journal with us, it's basically we're kind of giving, I guess, the answers we would have discovered doing that journaling. So if you did sort of follow along with that too, it might be interesting to sort of reflect again on the things you wrote down, especially if it's like a week ago. Now we're into the new year. It could be good to, I don't know, take a look and hear all the things that we're saying about our years, because it was crazy. It was a crazy year.
It was a crazy year. And I think if you happen to skip last week's episode and this kind of gets you inspired and thinking about your own year, definitely go back to last week's episode where we have like a guided journal prompt type episode for you. So yeah, maybe Tag, we can just start by jumping right into remind ourselves, each other, and our listeners what our 2022 goals were, like any major goals that carried on throughout the year, and then just kind of how we felt the year went, how we did with our goals, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I can start by saying that my sort of theme I came up with for the year was to simplify my life. And I don't necessarily think that that is what I would call the theme of this year, just because like things changed, circumstances changed, and my priorities kind of shifted. And I guess that's sort of like an interesting thing to sort of think about. The way that I pictured this year was not how this year turned out. And it is not necessarily in a good way or in a bad way. It's just different.
Yeah.
So
that's okay.
Yeah. I don't know. So I wanted to try to declutter my home to make things simpler, come up with long-term work from home solutions, read 35 books, journal once a month, reevaluate my career goals around June, and reach my monthly watch goals. And so, yeah, I continued to sort of like work on my home. I'm still working from home, and I don't know if I maybe simplified things or if I just became like a better homeowner. So I definitely think that's true. We sort of set up our office a little bit. It is currently like a disaster right now. Like I got it set up, but then it's like things change, like I said. So now we're still sort of working on that, but I'm still counting that as like a thing checked off the list because we did, we got new desks in there and we're all sort of situated in that way. And yeah, I continued to work on my home. Like I had a holiday party last night that at the time that we're recording, and everyone was like, wow, you've got your shit together. Like, I was like, okay, I guess I do, but yeah, I don't know. So that's good. I do feel like I made my home more, I don't know what the right word is. I keep thinking like usable, but like you can, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like efficient maybe, but.
Oh yeah. I like that.
Yeah, so that's been good. Like I figured out, I don't know, when you move, I feel like there's this whole like learning process and how to take care of your home. Like I figured out which products work best. And like, especially in my home, it's like we have wood flooring and I've never had wood flooring. Like, how do you take care of that? Like it's a whole thing to figure out. And yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if moving was something you as a listener took on this year, it's a big thing. And I feel like I haven't moved in such a long time, which I'm very grateful for. And I feel my whole family is probably grateful since we're like a moving squad anytime any of me or my sisters move. But it is one of those things. And I remember hearing once how like it's okay if you move in and live in the space and then start unpacking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like you can see, okay, when I'm in the kitchen, I automatically go to this cupboard for my dishes, or like
Yeah.
this cupboard, and then you can unpack according to that.
Yeah.
Where I've always been very much like a move, unpack, make it work, jump into your new life, your new neighborhood, your new space.
Yeah.
And it's like, why do that? Like, take the time, like you said, figure out what works best, figure out your space.
Yeah.
And change things if you need to change things.
Yeah. And there were a couple moments this year, like I would be home alone randomly and be like, oh, I want to bake cookies right now. And I could go in the cupboard and like get out my mixer and bake cookies. And then it's like, I don't think there was ever a point in my life where I thought that I would be able to do that. Like, I don't know. It's just like a whole new level. Like I was just in the grocery store and it's like, I know where everything is in the grocery store and I know the best way to get the coupons and do this. And it was just like, that's a whole new level that I think I reached this year.
You unlocked. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
So
honestly, I
lame,
get pumped talking about the grocery
Yeah.
store. So it's not lame at all.
Yeah. Well, our grocery store just got redone. It's very fancy. It's like a
Oh, the
whole
best.
experience.
I love that.
You like walk in and there's this huge fancy Starbucks. So the whole
Yes.
idea is
I was
like,
just going to
yeah,
say, did they put a Starbucks in?
heck yeah. You get the Starbucks and like, I don't know. It's so good.
That's so good. I'm a crazy
Yeah.
person, just while we're talking about being that person who feels like they have their life together. I feel like I have my life together when I'm planning my meals for the week
Yeah.
and writing my grocery list. And I'll write my grocery list in the order of which I go through the store.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
My mom doesn't do this, and she's like, that's kind of crazy, but it's a game changer. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how have you been doing groceries your whole life, Mom? Not organizing your list this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's just because, like you were saying, I know where everything is in my store. I know what I need, like
yeah.
a woman with a plan. But yeah, maybe that can be someone's 2023 goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take meal planning and grocery shopping like up
Yeah. To the
my
next
game.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to sort of talk about this year was I sort of had to shift priorities a little bit to support my husband, and just because like his work was crazy and he's in a band and the band like was crazy, something like they've only been doing it for a year. So at the beginning of 2022, I don't even think I mentioned them because I didn't think, I don't know.
Didn't think they'd make it.
Well, or it's
I'm
like
just
they
kidding.
play, a show
Yeah.
once every 6 months. But the reality was, especially in the summer, they were playing like a
Yeah.
show every single weekend.
And I remember that being one of your summer goals.
Yeah.
Being like, I'm going to be a good wife and like,
Be there. Yeah.
be there for my husband. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that I think also impacted, like, I think when I was talking about trying to simplify my home, I was thinking of the way that the world looked then, where it was
Mhm.
like another COVID resurgence, like we're back in lockdown.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to learn how to make bread. And,
Yeah.
and then it's like, have I had time to do that? No. And it's all because of positive reasons. Like the lockdown ended and I was out and I was seeing my husband's band and it was amazing. And so that also, I think, kind of impacted some of these goals. As far as like I'm almost at my reading goal. I said 35 books. I think I'm 2 away, but spoiler alert, we're recording this before the New Year's. And
we both laugh. So sneaky.
yeah, look at us go. And so I'm hoping that probably in the downtime over the holidays, I'll be able to read the last 2. I'm like very close to finishing a book, and then worst case scenario, I can find a really short book to read.
Yeah.
So feeling good about that. I did cycle through a couple months of daily journaling, which was new for me this year. And I started seeing a new therapist, which is very exciting, and I found has been very impactful for me. So
I love that.
yeah, that has been good. I love my therapist. She's the best. And so I'm sort of counting that towards the journaling goal, because I think that was the reasoning behind it. And what else? I received a promotion and a raise this year and came up with some sort of long-term career goals because, as I said, I was sort of feeling like, I don't know what I want. I need to reevaluate it, but I don't know. I find that it can be very frustrating if you're like, I feel that something is wrong, but I don't know what's wrong and I don't know how to
Yeah.
fix it. And I don't know, like with the job market, I found that like a lot of people probably were existing in like, well, it pays the bills,
Mm-hmm.
so that's it.
Especially through the pandemic too,
Yeah,
where you're like scared to make a move because you're like, I'm just
exactly.
happy I have a job.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
it's like, do you want to risk being a
Mm-hmm.
new hire at a company? Maybe not. Do you want to start a new
Exactly.
job virtually? Maybe not. Like,
Exactly.
so I was like, I don't even know what I want, but I do find that I've made like some good breakthroughs and yeah. So feeling
That's
good
good.
about that.
Yeah. And also those long-term goals, I think I need to sit down and like think about that too because it
Yeah.
really gives you, well, that's why I love goal setting in general, is it gives you guidance and kind of direction,
Yeah.
where you feel like you have a purpose if you
Yeah.
know what you're working toward rather than just showing up and being, doing the same thing day
Yeah.
and day, being like, why am I even doing this?
Yeah.
What's the
What's the
point?
point? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's been good. And I do
Yeah.
feel like my career has had like an exciting year compared to like over the pandemic for obvious reasons. It was
Right.
very stagnant. And so that is positive. And yeah, we'll see where it takes me. I also joined Monday Girl, which I've talked about before, which I find very motivating.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope to use it a little more in the new year. I haven't been using it, I think, like as much as I would like, although I
Yeah.
have still been using a lot of services that come with it. But yeah, so that's exciting. And then as far as my last goal about getting my Apple Watch like achievements, I just stopped wearing my Apple Watch because I didn't want to get a tan line from it. And so I just literally stopped wearing it. And I also like the idea of like focusing more on the experience
Mm-hmm.
than the goals. And like as we went on our honeymoon and it was in Hawaii and it's like I'm not going to wear it to the beach and then I'd be like, but then my steps won't count.
Right.
And but then it's like, yeah, but you're still doing the steps even
Yeah.
if your watch doesn't count them. And so that was kind of like a duh, like it's so obvious, but sometimes you need to like remind yourself of that.
Yeah.
And so once I had that realization, so I'll wear it sometimes, like if I go to yoga or whatever, but I think it would be nice to get back into wearing it, especially because it reminds me to stand up, which is someone who works at a desk and
Yeah. You need that little
yeah,
little reminder through the day. I get
yeah.
that.
And so I did, sorry, I've been talking forever, but this
No,
is
that's fine. I'm invested.
yeah.
This is just also so nice because like we spend so much of the time or so much
Yeah.
time through the year together, but it's like I love hearing you reflect on your year.
Right.
Even though,
Yeah.
like I've seen you throughout the year doing different
Hmm.
things or whatever. I don't know. It's just I'm
Yeah.
enjoying this so
Oh,
much just
good.
listening to you talk about your year.
It's also like I don't like my goals weren't things like that I'd
Yeah.
post on Instagram or something.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
no one would know.
Exactly.
Would
Yeah.
anyone notice that I stopped wearing my Apple Watch? Probably not. Maybe
Right.
like Tyrell or my mom, but
Yeah.
like no one else
I didn't
would
know.
care. Yeah,
Yeah.
like and so I don't know. It's interesting,
Yeah.
but
And I love just seeing like how people think. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
100%. Yeah. And so reflecting or sort of looking at all of these goals and how I did, I find
Hmm.
that with goals, I'm either like all or nothing,
Yeah.
which is me with like a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to work in the future on focusing on like done is better than perfect. And like if you don't want to wear your Apple Watch in the ocean, that doesn't mean that you never wear your Apple Watch again for the rest of the year. If you're
Right.
not daily journaling, that doesn't mean that you're done journaling for the year. And so I think that's something I need to sort of focus on in the new year. And I think I'm getting better at it. Like, if you set a goal to read every day and you miss a day, you don't then stop reading.
Right.
But yeah, so that's kind of what I gleaned from my goals this year.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do you think there's like another word or something that would better represent your 2022 than simplifying your life? And that's like a loaded question.
Yeah, I
So,
don't know. I think I'd have to think about it more.
yeah.
Like,
I was trying to think if I could think of one from like all of what you
Yeah.
just said, but
Like the first instinct is like busy, but I don't love that. I hate when people talk
yeah,
about how busy they are, even though I do that all the time.
but
I,
it's kind of like a restart or something,
yeah,
you
or
know, like
kind of how last year you were talking about like leveling up your life.
yeah,
I do feel that there was a lot of leveling up in
yeah,
certain ways.
I could see that.
So maybe like
Yeah.
leveling up, or I don't know. It felt like there was the before pandemic, and then there was
Yes.
like a big chunk that was just like pandemic, and then this year felt like almost a different life to
Yeah,
both of those things. So
totally.
yeah.
Okay, I love it. Well, I can share some reflection on my
Yeah.
2022, and then I think we're gonna also chat through some of our favorite like memories and moments from this year.
Yeah.
So definitely stick around to hear more about Tegan's 2022 from that. But my year, or no, sorry, my word of the year for 2022 was wellness. And like way back at in January of 2022, I set my yearly goals and then I broke them into like wellness for my mind, body, and soul, which I know is so cliche and cheesy. But why I chose wellness was coming out of 2021, I was in rough shape mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Like thinking, and I'll talk about this more, but this whole idea of wellness was really just to try to find myself again. And I was like feeling very lost throughout 2021. I felt like I was doing stuff, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
feeling myself in quotes. And I was just so desperate to like find myself again. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to take matter in my own hands. I'm going to have a year of wellness. I'm going to do things that I know make me happy. And hopefully along the way, I find myself again.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I find interesting though, and I'm going to talk through what my goals were, but just a few weeks ago, I was in a yoga class and my yoga instructor on Tuesday nights is the best. Like, I feel not everybody would love her, but I love her because she's just like spitting out inspirational things left, right, and center. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
you go to a class, you're like, okay, I've probably heard all the inspirational things she could possibly like know. No. Then you're like holding something, you're shaking, you don't think you can go anymore, and she spits out some other word of wisdom you've never heard before, and you're like, damn girl, that is exactly what I needed to hear. Anyways, like Tegan said, we're kind of like pre-recording this, so I think she said this like end of November timeframe, and it just stuck with me. And it was when I was starting to think about my 2022 reflection that she said this, and it really resonated. And what she said was, you didn't come here to find yourself, you came here to create yourself. And I was like, damn, girl. Like,
Yeah.
that's maybe cliche, maybe cheesy. You know, imagine us in the middle of a yoga class, you know, shaking, holding a plank. Like, okay.
Yeah.
But in the like grander context of my whole year of wellness, I was like, that is exactly what this year was I wasn't doing these things to find myself. At the time I thought I was, but it was more to recreate myself or to build myself up again, to become a new version of myself, like we were saying, kind of post pandemic or whatever. So I don't know. I found that thought very liberating and made me feel good because I was like, yeah, I'm feeling like totally opposite to how I was feeling this time last year. So I'd say it was a very successful year. And it was really this whole theme of wellness, mental health that tied my year together. So, under the whole mind bucket, one of my biggest goals for the year was to start talking to a therapist, which I did. I was lucky where I found one therapist online, had a consultation, was like, yep, I think this is fine. We had our first session, and then I've talked to her every 3 to 4 weeks ever since. So that has been a full year now of therapy, and it really helped me through the first half of the year when I was still kind of really not recovering from, but really struggling with my mental health. She really, you know, I came to some really big conclusions about myself and like epiphanies in the first half of the year through therapy. And it was kind of like you were saying, where 2022 felt like it was like not pre-pandemic, sorry, it was pandemic. And
Yeah.
then like the last half was like less
Something
pandemic-y.
different.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
whole different life. And that's kind of how like my mental health also flowed. So it's interesting. But anyways, starting to talk to a therapist was a goal that I achieved. Another one, which is hard to quantify or to say if you checked it off, but a mind goal was to protect my energy. And it's doing things that fill me up and saying no to people and things that wear me down. I can think of a few instances where I said no to things I really didn't want to do, but again, it's hard to be like, yeah, I achieved that. So this is an ongoing practice for sure.
Yeah.
And the last thing in the mind bucket was to take courses to learn something new. And this one I didn't do. I don't think I even started on it.
Yeah.
I like the
Yeah.
idea of it, but at the same time, I hate being new at something. So I think this was me trying to challenge myself to push through the beginner phase of something, but I didn't do that. So that wasn't successful. But onto the body piece, a big part of my 2022 was really focused on my physical wellness as well, as I find working out helps with my mental health. But I was also gaining weight, feeling yucky, that sort of thing. So I, in 2021, had worked with a trainer for a month. So I rehired her in 2022, and we worked out together 2 to 3 times a week until October. And then after October, I went back to my yoga studio and started doing that 2 times a week. So that was a win, I guess, but definitely need to stay on top of that in 2023. And also kind of in the body, kind of in the mind, kind of in this whole bucket is using a daily habit tracker. So I have like a step goal, water goal, vitamins, like daily tasks that I try to do every single day to inject a little wellness into my daily routine. And I was actually very good with my habit tracker this year. I paid for it. So I think that's part of the reason why. But I also just renewed it for 2023 because I was like, this was working. So let's just keep it going. So yeah, the step goal, I didn't achieve it a lot of the time. The water goal is pretty good. Vitamins, not so much. It's kind of like here and there, but the overall use of a habit tracker was successful for me. And then the last piece was my whole soul bucket. And these, again, are kind of hard things to quantify or like tick off the list, but one of them was to tour my own city through a Toronto bucket list. I kind of created a Toronto bucket list at the beginning of the year, and I ticked off maybe about half of those things, but it's still something I'll continue to do and like places to go and stuff, but I can't even think of any examples right now of what I did, but that I hadn't done before. But I don't know, still getting out to see my own city to feed my soul. Yeah. Next was to get out of my city and visit Quebec City, Montreal, and or New York. So I went to Montreal. At the time of writing this, my family was talking about maybe doing a family trip to Quebec City, but that didn't end up happening. So I just went to Montreal to see my sister. I didn't make it to New York, but that's just because I did not have the money to. But I went to Montreal twice, and both times it was really lovely. So that was a success and still got me on a plane and somewhere new. Another goal was to host family/friends once per season. And again, I think I did this. Like, I know it started with my Galentine's Day brunch in February. And then through the summer, I had my cousin come stay with me, my sister. Like, I don't know. I had my Christmas party, first one since 2019. So I feel like this was a success. And then the last thing was to date. And I wrote, seriously in my journal. And this one I wouldn't say was a huge success. I definitely had my summer of dating, which was a lot of fun. But it wasn't super serious. I wasn't like, I'm finding a boyfriend. This is the end, So this is the end. I love how I said it that way. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was more like a fun thing. So I don't know. I made strides on it, I guess. But so those were my big yearly goals. I think outside of that, some other things I am proud of was I did surpass my reading goal. I set just 12 books for the year, and I think I'm going to end up around 18 or 19. So that was great. But I think also part of this is starting a book club. I'm really happy about that. And we just had a new member join. So I'm like, let's just make this larger than life because it brings me so much joy. And this is something new to Teagan that I'm just going to talk about on the podcast. But I feel like we could also turn it into like a Patreon thing where it's like, you know, you guys can know what book we're reading. And if you want to join our Patreon community, you can like comment your thoughts on it. I think that could be fun. Little Patreon perk. But anyways, more to come on that. I also got my driver's license this year, which you guys have been hearing me talk about in my goals since this podcast started in 2021. So that is a huge relief to everyone everyone in my family who's been wanting me to do this forever. And to me, obviously, I finally ordered new glasses, which was something I've been procrastinating for literally years. I was contributing to my savings account very consistently, and then also became a people manager at work. So that was a big work milestone that I'm proud of. Outside of work, more like side hustle, was our podcast surpassed 25,000 plays, which was a huge deal. We reached over 1,000 Instagram followers. We're actually over 2,000, but the goal was 1,000 for the year. We're over 8,000 TikTok followers. Like it was just really great year for the podcast, and I'm so proud of that. And then also being interviewed on Salem Me podcast, which if you guys didn't see that on Instagram, we were on her podcast. I think it was around December 16th or something.
Yeah, it's part of her Podmas.
Yeah. And we talked all about our podcasting journey with Alina from Girl We Gotta Talk. So go give that a listen if you want to hear more about behind the scenes of our podcast. But being on the other side and like somebody asking us to be on their podcast, I was like, crazy. I think we made it, Tag. Like,
I was very stressed. Like, full disclosure. I know like she listens to our podcast. So if you're listening now, like, I'm sorry. I was so stressed because I don't know. It's like, it's out of our control. It's all like you're passing the control to someone else.
Yeah.
So like shout out to everyone who's been a guest on our podcast because it's a stressful thing. Like your voice is in someone else's hands.
Yeah. Is this what it feels like to be a celebrity? I just saw this TikTok with Jennifer Lawrence. I think she was talking to like Vanity Fair or somebody and was saying how she doesn't do interviews because they literally stress her out so much. Where for her, since she is a real celebrity, I was just joking. We don't view ourselves as celebrities at all, but she'll do the interview. Then she'll stress about how it's like wrote, how it comes out, how it's edited, then how people I want to say receive it. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
How people, and she'll just be an anxious mess about one interview. So sounds like Teagan can relate to that.
Yeah. I actually find a lot of what Jennifer Lawrence says relatable. Yeah, she's very interesting.
But anyways, to wrap all this up, I do think this was truly my year of wellness. And I think though, just the intention of it, well, I guess it was to like feel myself again. And I definitely am, but I don't know. It definitely was my year of wellness.
Love that.
Yeah. Maybe I'm between year of wellness and year of mental health, but I think they're kind of the both.
The same.
They're kind of the both. Can you tell I'm done? Yeah, kind of the same.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I think now we can maybe just go into some of our favorite moments and memories from this year.
Yeah.
Because this is something we did last year. And I do think like my favorite part of sort of reflecting on the year this way is just like coming up with these moments. Like, it's
totally
really fun.
And I think sometimes these take more work to remember.
Yeah.
Like when you think back on your year, you might immediately think of the bad things like a breakup or I got fired or, you know, something. But it's like those were, of course, big traumatic moments, but there's so many good little moments that we overlook. So it is important to take the time to reflect on the good times as well.
I can kick us off. So the way I came up with this is I go through my pictures, like my camera roll, my Instagram stories, because I forget everything. And also this year felt very long to me. Like things in the summer, I was like, that could have been 5 summers ago. Like, so that was very helpful. I went to New York City, which was very exciting. And I went for a concert, which was Billy Joel. So I saw him at Madison Square Gardens. And so that was like checking off a bunch of things on my bucket list. It was like a bucket list weekend, which is crazy.
I love that.
And What else happened? My wedding was covered in the Toronto Star, which is our big newspaper. And so that was something that felt like it happened years ago. But then I was like, oh no, I guess that was this year. Obviously, as I mentioned, I followed around my husband's band, the Holy Gamblers, all over Ontario to like music festivals and bars. And yeah, so that was a big highlight. We went viral multiple times.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy. Not even something I think I would have thought possible.
Yeah.
And yet here we are.
I feel like it was one of those things where it was like, man, it would be nice, if a TikTok popped off and we got podcast listeners.
Yeah.
And then it happened and we're like, wait,
yeah.
what is happening?
Oh,
we were
I
both
know.
scared. Like we were texting each other like at 100,000 views, being like, oh my God.
It's happening. It's still going.
Then we started getting hate comments and we're like, oh my God, how do people deal with this?
I know. I can't even imagine. Like I do a lot of TikTok in my job.
Yeah.
And it is very frustrating because the platform changes pretty much every single day. And like, I can't imagine if you were a creator and that was your sole source of income.
Yeah.
Like,
it's stressful.
Yeah, crazy. Like, we're doing it for fun. So it's like, hey, TikTok's popping up. That's great. And yeah, but it's still like, we're having fun. At least, yeah. I try.
We try to remind ourselves that it's just fun.
For the most part, I have fun. Yeah, so that was great. Obviously, like I mentioned, I got a promotion and a raise, and my job trajectory has been going very well. And it actually has been going very well because of some of these TikToks. So that's kind of like an added bonus to all of this because now we have a lot of clients who want TikToks, and I'm the only person in my entire company who has ever posted a TikTok.
Never mind gone viral.
Been a viral sensation. So that's been great. I went on my honeymoon this year, like I mentioned. And so I went to California. I went to LA for the first time ever. I went to Disneyland for the first time ever. And we went to Hawaii. I saw a bunch of music, like I've already mentioned some, but we also saw Dave Matthews, Harry Styles, All Time Low, Simple Plan. Whole bunch of cool people. I went to a party with the Raptors, which is another thing that's like looking at this list. If I was looking at this list in, say, January, or if I was writing my goals of these are things I would like to do this year, I would sound like an insane person. Yet here I am.
This is your reality. We love it.
And I made some new friends.
We love
that. Yeah.
That's tough as an adult. So like this is a good.
It's hard. I feel like a lot of adulthood is like pruning friendships and losing friendships. So the fact that I made new friends and then got to try some new experiences and yeah.
I was going to say like the first half of your list, I was getting like Charlotte from Sex and the City vibes where you're like, I was in New York and my wedding was covered in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And then like I was being a supportive wife to my husband. I was like, yes, Charlotte, you go.
Yeah.
Then you started going like full on Samantha maybe, like partying with the Raptors.
Yeah.
So funny.
Actually, before that Raptors party, I'm an anxious person, spoiler alert. And so I was stressing again because I was like, just a very bizarre experience. But I was also going like, just with a friend, like without my husband, I didn't know what to wear. And I was like, just channel Carrie Bradshaw. Like she goes to events without even thinking about it. Like she's just like in the, and I was like, okay, just channel her. If she was invited to this party, what would she do? She'd just show up.
And she would, pick up a Yankee.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, wait, that would be my energy going to this.
Yeah. So, yes, that was definitely the vibe I had to bring a couple times.
I love that. Honestly, if we want 2023 to be the year we channel our inner Carrie Bradshaw, I'm fine with that. Us as a collective group on the podcast. Such a vibe. I love it so much. Well, my list also starts off with the Raptors.
Hell yeah, it does.
I don't know if this is in like order of how the year went, but anyways, the first thing on my list, yes, I went to my first Raptors game. Unfortunately, it wasn't as exciting as partying with them and Neo, like Teagan.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Neo.
So
I literally keep forgetting that he was involved.
Oh my goodness. I think Neo was like one of my top artists in 2020.
Oh
He was
my
like
God.
my my pandemic,
Wow.
like
That's funny.
pandemic, what do I want to say? Like hero, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
So many good throwbacks. But
Oh, wow.
anyways, I went to my first Raptors game and my seats were amazing. And how it worked out was one of my friends just got back from a trip to the UK with her boyfriend, and she got home. Her mom's boss gave her mom tickets to the Raptors.
Right.
Really, really great seats. Her boyfriend got sick from
Oh.
their trip back. He like
Yeah.
somehow picked up COVID, but
Mhm.
she didn't get it. So like nobody could go with her. Her boyfriend was sick, and she was like, "Hey, want to go to this Raptors game?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Are you serious?" And then it just ended up being such a good night. The Raptors won. The seats were great. I had my, what was it, Jungle Juice, Jurassic Punch, whatever.
Oh, sure.
You
Yeah.
know, it was a time. But that was really exciting. And then Tegan and I are going to another game January, which I'm also pumped about. But anyways, we'll move on from the Raptors. One of my favorite memories from this year is like a very specific weekend.
Mhm.
And I thought I'd just share that with you guys. I don't know why this weekend sticks out in my brain when I was thinking of like my favorite moments and memories. Well, maybe I do, but how it started was Friday night. I went on a date to a USS concert, and USS is a Toronto band, and this was their last concert ever.
Yeah.
And how this whole date came to be, it was a very spontaneous last minute thing, which is not who I am. I'm like a planner.
Mhm.
So the fact I agreed to go on this date last minute, it was just very not me, but it made such a great story and like such a great night because
Yeah.
it was so spontaneous. So that was my Friday night. And I became a huge USS fan after that, even though I was like,
Interesting.
but this is their last concert ever.
Yeah, you
like,
missed it.
not the time to be getting into this. Anyways, it was great. Then Saturday, I went to the Lumineers concert, and the Lumineers concert was my favorite concert I went to this year. I think it's just because they're like my favorite band I saw this year. Like
Mhm.
the Harry Styles concert was amazing, don't get me wrong, but that was amazing because he's so famous and
Right.
like
Yeah.
because
It was like a spectacle.
it was a spectacle, yes,
Yeah.
and like the teenage girl energy in that room, I was thriving.
Yeah.
Then I went to the All Time Low concert, which was also amazing, but it was like my teenage girl was
Yeah.
thriving.
Yeah.
But the Lumineers, it was like, again, I had great seats. The music was like right into my soul. It was just so great. So that was my favorite concert of the year. And then Sunday, Tegan and I went to a fitness class with MK Fit, who I feel she's like a global sensation at this point,
Yeah.
but she's a Toronto-based fitness influencer who Tegan and I were doing her classes like virtually at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was so fun to do one in person together. But all of that happened on one weekend in June. And it was like
Yeah.
me living my best life. And literally, it was like the summer,
Mhm.
I was my best self. Like one of our
Yeah.
journal prompts from last week's episode was, when did you feel most alive over the past 12 months? And through the summer, I felt the most alive. Like I was out doing stuff. I was
Yeah.
spending time with people I loved and like doing new stuff and spending a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
Nothing makes me feel more alive than that. But like
Yeah.
it was just so great. So anyways, this was just one weekend
I
that
love
came to
that.
mind.
Did you know that my brother Duncan's band that he used to be in opened up for USS?
I think maybe you did tell me that.
Yeah, because I had never like heard of them before, and then people were like stoked.
Yeah. And their fans were like fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Like between every song, they were chanting USS. Like as if it was like an
whoa.
encore. But
Yeah.
it was between every single song.
That's crazy.
And like there were people in like their 60s. There were kids like
yeah.
teenagers. There were people like totally like really like hardcore like gothic. Then there was like preppy people like
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't know. It was so interesting, but it was so great. Like
Yeah.
they're a vibe.
Yeah, I didn't realize how famous they were because I
Yeah,
assumed they weren't.
me
Because
either.
his band was opening up for them.
Yeah.
And then like I moved to Toronto and like people would play USS songs at like work parties and stuff. And I was like, how do you guys
Yeah.
know these songs? Like, I don't know.
I know. I think it's maybe because we didn't grow up in Toronto. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
don't know.
Like I also didn't know who they were before I went to this concert. And
Yeah.
then, however, after I went to the concert and started getting into them, like the bonds I formed with random people over it, like it was so good, but so funny. Also, favorite why can't I speak? Moments, memories from this year. Hosting, I know I said that was one of my goals, but just so many good gatherings of like family and friends. And as much as I am an introvert, like socializing exhausts me, I love spending time with people. Like since I live alone, especially, like doing something special and like around a holiday, or I don't know, just having like a cozy night in, doesn't need to be anything huge, just brings me so much joy. So that was a highlight from the year. And last thing that came to mind as a favorite memory was just adventuring around my own city, which again was one of my goals for the year. But one of my best friends and I, we went to the beaches a few times throughout the summer, and like that was my favorite neighborhood in Toronto this year. Like it was just so fun, and like being on the actual beach was really nice. We did a little holiday road trip. It was great. I also was in my Frida Kahlo era this year, where I'm actually wearing this sweater right now as we're recording this, which is hilarious. I did not plan for that at all. But how it started was with this sweater I saw in a boutique in Montreal, and it says "Fierce Like Frida" on it. And I fell in love with this sweater, and my sister was like, "Who's Frida?" And I was like, she's like the Mexican painter, like she's a huge feminist icon. And then she's like, "Well, tell me more." And I was like, "Well, that's about all I know." So my old roommate slash best friend is Mexican, and she's like, "Oh yeah, like there's a movie on her, there's like an exhibit." So I was like, "Oh my god." So I watched the movie, we went to the exhibit, it was a whole thing, and I was obsessed. So that was a thing. But then also, so I did the whole like exhibit thing. I also did the immersive Van Gogh exhibit. Like we're just doing it all this year. And then I also went to the theater twice, which was amazing, and I definitely need to do more of that in 2023. So anyways, that is all. I feel like I've been rambling on forever, but those are some of my favorite again moments and memories from 2022. I'm clearly losing it, guys.
Love it. So I think we are going to end off this episode just talking about 2023, maybe our intentions, what we hope will happen, not necessarily specific goals, but vibes we want. I don't know.
Yeah. The vibes we're channeling for 2023. I love it. Yeah. Well, I can start. I feel like for 2023, well, okay, let me back up. So I was just talking to my therapist about this because I was like, I'm doing this 2022 reflection, and like I really feel so much better, and I think it's because of all these things that I did throughout my year of wellness, like talking to a therapist, working out, whatever. And she's like, "Yes, I agree. Like that's why you're feeling that way. It's not just coincidental that you're feeling better." So I was like, so true. So this is so not buzzy or like social media like friendly, but what I'm kind of thinking for 2023, my intention is kind of just to stay disciplined and kind of like to say my year of discipline. Like that sounds dumb and like I said, not buzzy, but that's all that I'm really coming up with. And it's like I want to continue these habits that I set for myself. I want to continue talking to a therapist. I want to continue going to the yoga studio, taking off my daily habit tracker, and like getting out, spending time with family and friends, like all of this. So I don't have any specific goals yet. I feel like some will come to me as I try to figure out, what do I want to take on next? But I think it is a good reminder too and I know we've kind of talked about this on the podcast before, but a lot of these goals and habits, like they're not one and done, they're ongoing, and you can sometimes build off of them, but sometimes it's like I just need to set the goal to keep going. And that's kind of what 2023 is, because I think if I were to do more, strive for more, to instantly be like, okay, great, the foundation's back in place, now let's achieve like I typically do, I'd fall off again. And I'm like, my mental health is great, I don't want to push it, so 2023 right now, my intention is just to stay focused, stay disciplined, keep doing the work, because it's rewarding.
Yeah, I love that. I kind of feel like my year it's felt like a lot of things were sort of like out of my control. And that sounds negative, but it was more so like, okay, my career's ramping up. Like, I
Here
guess
we
we'll see
go.
what happens, you know? And it wasn't like I didn't feel like I was like driving the boat. I was like on the boat and I was like, let's see where we go.
Yeah.
And I felt that way with like a lot of stuff. And so I don't necessarily know if I want to become more, I don't know, like in charge, or if I want to sit back and be like, well, let's just see what happens. Like, let's see what this year has for me. Like, I feel like there were a couple years where it was like all of my intentions were driven by like a desperation or something. And I feel
Right.
like I've been letting that go. So I think if I continue sort of down that path, that could be good.
Yeah.
But that all sounds very like frou-frou-y and like, what does any of that mean? I don't know.
No, I think
So
that's good.
yeah, I think that's kind of my intention. I will say that I do want to focus more on physical health. This year was just like, we got to do it. Like, put your head down, do the work, get out there. And like, it yielded good results. And I don't regret that. But it was like, something's got to give. I don't have time for everything.
Right.
And so taking care of myself was what gave. And like, that's fine. Like I said, I don't regret that. But I would like to prioritize that. And I do find, for obvious reasons, in January, it's very easy.
Yeah.
To do that. So I am excited to do like the daily yoga challenge and dry January. And Tyrell and I are going on vacation in February. So it's like, obviously that will be very motivational. And yeah, I'm feeling good, but I'm also like aware that we will just like see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's healthy, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I can't plan it.
Yeah.
I think that maybe that's a lesson I learned from this
Yeah.
year. And sometimes when you are doing like hyper specific goals, especially if it's a hyper specific goal for an entire year, the chance that like circumstances change
Exactly.
is pretty high. So yeah,
I love that.
we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
You can catch up with us next year.
Yeah.
And see what I said. But yeah, I think that's everything we wanted to sort of mention this episode. Thanks so much for listening. We hope that you had a fabulous like holiday and had a great new year and are also sort of reflecting on the past year, writing in your journal, talking to your therapist, planning things out, that kind of thing, because it can be very rewarding and can be a nice start to the year. I think especially if you've had a bad year. Like if you've had a good year, it's almost like, hey, let's keep the vibes going. But if you've had a bad year, it's like, nope,
This is your
clean
chance.
slate. Yeah, exactly. So we put out a new episode every single Tuesday, and make sure you're subscribed to us and you follow us so that you see when those new episodes drop. In between those episodes, you can follow us on social media. We're at Our Golden 20s, and we are also on Patreon, which is the best way to show your support for the podcast. As always, thanks for listening.
See you next Tuesday.